These are the headlines we're following at this hour. South Korea, Japan, and China held high-level diplomatic talks in Seoul to lay out the groundwork for holding a trilateral summit within this year. No such summits have taken place in the past 4 years. President Yoon warned South Korea and the U.S. will end North Korea's regime should it use nuclear weapons. This as South Korea celebrates the upcoming Armed Forces Day with demonstrations of its latest weapons and a rare, massive military parade here in central Seoul. South Korea adds more golds, bringing its total at the Hangzhou Asian Games to 10, with fencer Oh Sang-woo clinching gold at All-Korean final, while the South Korean men's swimming relay team breaks an Asian record. Good afternoon. Ahead of the 75th Armed Forces Day on October 1st, President Yoon sent out a message of warning to North Korea that South Korea and the U.S. will end the regime should it use its nuclear weapons. The remarks came as the president attended the country's first large-scale celebration of Armed Forces Day in a decade, showcasing South Korea's latest combat power demonstrations. That included some 6,700 troops, including U.S. forces, and South Korea's latest advanced military assets, including long-range surface-to-air missiles and light-armed helicopter. Once again describing North Korea's nuclear program as existential threat to the South and a challenge to world peace, Yoon says Seoul will immediately retaliate against any provocations from Pyongyang and that the regime's use of nuclear weapons will bring about its downfall by triggering an overwhelming response from the ROK-US alliance. The South Korean leader added that nuclear weapons will never be able to guarantee the North's security. And as part of the Armed Forces Day celebration, South Korea will stage a massive street military parade for the first time in a decade. The defense ministry says the military parade will take place in central Seoul along Sejongdae-do starting at 4 p.m. And it will be larger and more advanced than the last one held in 2013. A military parade was held in 2008 and 2013 before the Moon Jae-in administration downsized it in 2018 in a bid to improve relations with North Korea. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says South Korea and the U.S. have been strengthening all aspects of their partnerships, including security, trade, and economic dimensions. The comments come as Blinken stressed that North Korea-Russia military cooperation will threaten global peace. Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has once again highlighted the ironclad alliance between South Korea and the U.S. Speaking during the 8th Annual South Korea-U.S. Strategic Forum, co-hosted by the Center for Strategic and International Studies and the Korea Foundation on Monday in Washington, Blinken analyzed that the allies have been strengthening all aspects of their partnership, including security, trade, and economic dimensions. The top U.S. diplomat also noted that South Korea and the U.S. will soon celebrate 70 years since the signing of a mutual defense treaty, and that such cooperation has helped the alliance to grow even more in the spirit of 같이 갑시다, or let's go together.
Ever since, our alliance has been fortified by our enduring cooperation, by the shared spirit of 같이 갑시다. 70 years of relationship that has grown from a key security alliance into a vital global partnership.
He also took time to mention the enhanced trilateral cooperation with Japan, including the Camp David summit between the leaders of South Korea, the U.S., and Japan. Meanwhile, Blinken also discussed the threats posed by a potential North Korea-Russia military cooperation. He stressed that North Korea's threats to broader security were demonstrated clearly by Kim Jong-un's visit to Russia this month. He added that Pyongyang is looking to strengthen and advance its own missile programs by working hand-in-hand with Russia and threatening global peace and security. Monday's forum was held to discuss the 70th anniversary of the signing of the Mutual Defense Treaty between South Korea and the United States on October 1st and the alliance's future over the next 7 decades. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol and First Lady Kim Gun-hee will make a state visit to the United Kingdom in November upon the invitation of King Charles III. The visit marks the 140th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Korea and the UK and will be Yoon's first trip there since King's coronation. The South Korean leader's previous visit to London was in September last year for the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. Senior diplomats from South Korea, Japan, and China held high-level talks in Seoul on Tuesday to discuss ways to resume holding trilateral summits between their leaders. South Korea, as the chair of the meeting, is seeking to hold such a summit by the end of this year. The country's Deputy Foreign Minister Chung Byung-won sat down for talks with Japan's Senior Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs Takehiro Funakoshi and China's Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yoon. The summit between three countries has not been held since 2019 amid strained relations between Seoul and Tokyo due to diplomatic and trade disputes triggered by historical issues that date back to Japan's colonization of Korea before and during World War II. South Korea's main opposition Democratic Party leader Myung has appeared in court for a substantive review of arrest warrants amid corruption allegations surrounding him. Now, the DEP leader, who recently ended a 24-day hunger strike protesting the Yoon government, appeared at the Seoul Central District Court using a cane. At the so-called warrant trial, Lee and his lawyers will defend him against multiple charges, including breach of trust and bribery. The prosecution, on the other hand, will likely assert the risk of destroying evidence as one of the main reasons Lee should be detained. The judge will then determine whether to issue an arrest warrant, which could take place late tonight or early tomorrow morning. This comes after the National Assembly passed a consent to arrest lawmaker motion last week. U.S. President Joe Biden hosted leaders and representatives of 18 Pacific Island nations, and he pledged to work with U.S. Congress to provide $200 million of new funding for the region in an apparent move to counter the influence of China. Yoon tells more.
The White House summit hosted by President Joe Biden, where he met with Pacific Island leaders on Monday, was the second meeting of its kind in just over a year. The forum is seen as a part of a larger Biden administration effort to deepen ties with the region, where officials say Beijing is hopeful of protecting military power. Before welcoming the 18 leaders and representatives, Biden announced U.S. diplomatic recognition of two more Pacific Island nations, the Cook Islands and Niue, highlighting that recognizing them as sovereign and independent states would enable expansion for a stronger partnership. During the welcoming ceremony, Biden emphasized that the U.S. is committed to ensuring a free, open, prosperous, and secure Indo-Pacific region. He also pledged to work with U.S. Congress to provide $200 million more in funding for the region. The funds would be used for projects aimed at resolving issues including climate change, economic growth, public health, and countering illegal fishing. However, Washington appears to have made no progress over offers of substantial infrastructure funding to the Solomon Islands, whose prime minister has deepened ties with China and did not attend the summit. Also absent was the newly appointed Prime Minister of Vanuatu, who took power just 2 weeks ago following a no-confidence vote against his predecessor for actions including signing a security pact with U.S. ally Australia. China signed a policing agreement with Vanuatu just last month. Speaking at the summit, President Biden invoked America's World War II campaign against Japan in the region and, without naming China, implied that a battle of another kind was now underway. He added that a great deal of history will be written across the Pacific over the coming years, with partnership key to writing that history together. Yoon, Arirang News.
One of the most powerful ground weapons in the U.S. arsenal, the Abrams tanks, have arrived in Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in a statement released on Monday, thanked Washington for fulfilling its pledges and added Kyiv is preparing to reinforce its brigades. It is the first batch of the 31 tanks the U.S. government has promised to provide. The exact number of tanks delivered so far hasn't been revealed yet. U.S. President Joe Biden, during his meeting with Zelensky in Washington last week, announced Washington's plan to deliver the Abrams tanks. Also announced on the same day was $325 million fresh military package to Ukraine. North Korea's borders, which have been closed due to COVID-19 pandemic, have been completely opened after more than 3.5 years. Foreigners are now allowed to enter, but they must undergo a 2-day quarantine upon arrival. Our Myung reports.
North Korea's borders are now fully reopened, some 3 years and 8 months since the regime was completely sealed off due to the COVID-19 outbreak. According to Chinese state media outlet CCTV, starting Monday, North Korea has started allowing entry for foreigners. Without specifying the source of the announcement, CCTV reported that authorities in Pyongyang lifted the border closure with the requirement of a 2-day quarantine period upon arrival. The regime has shown movement towards opening its borders for the past few months. In July, it allowed the entry of delegations from China and Russia and also allowed its citizens living abroad to return home last month and an easing of antivirus measures and border controls. Plans to reopen were also evident in terms of policymaking. Last month, North Korea adopted a new law to revitalize its tourism industry. It addresses issues including expanding both domestic and international tourism and ensuring convenience for tourists. Also, earlier this month, North Korea's leader Kim Jongun traveled to Russia for a summit with President Vladimir Putin, and North Korean athletes who are participating at the Hangzhou Asian Games have traveled to China. Regarding the reopening of North Korea's borders, during its briefing on Monday, the U.S. Department of State reaffirmed its commitment to diplomacy with the regime, stating that the Biden administration has consistently welcomed and been open to dialogue with North Korea, which Pyongyang has rejected. 신하영, Arirang News.
There are reportedly over 2 million people here in South Korea who grow vegetables in their gardens or green spaces, or who cultivate pet plants. These so-called urban farmers are creating urban agriculture that is worth over $3 billion in value. Jongun has more.
This is a pet plant clinic where horticulture experts are the doctors. After diagnosing that the plant's roots are in bad shape, the experts repot the plants and recommend nutrients for them. The pet plant clinic is equipped with treatment rooms and wards, and even offers intensive treatment for up to 3 months in serious cases.
Most of the time, the problem is related to watering or lighting, so we diagnose the issue and prescribe a solution so owners can grow the plants properly.
Biowalls, also known as botanical air purifiers, have gained popularity here. Installation inquiries have been steady, mainly from schools and offices, as they are known to reduce fine dust and alleviate sick building syndrome. The Rural Development Administration first developed biowalls in South Korea in 2013 and has since transferred technology 19 times to private companies.
Looking from the perspective of people who spend over 90% of their time indoors, there's a high level of satisfaction from creating such spaces in terms of reducing fine dust.
As of last year, there were 1.96 million urban farmers who cultivated gardens and green spaces. The area of urban gardens reached 1,052 hectares. When the value of urban agriculture was converted into money, the analysis results show that it was worth more than 5 trillion won, or roughly $3.7 billion. Urban agriculture's economic value, such as in purchasing agricultural supplies and creating jobs, exceeded 3 trillion won, or about $2.2 billion. The social value, which includes physical activity and emotional well-being, reached 1.3 trillion won, or $981 million, while the environmental value, such as in carbon reduction or urban greening, was worth 700 billion won, or $528 million.
This is significant as we quantified how effective urban agriculture is both socially and environmentally, beyond simply thinking it would be good.
As urban farming is gaining attention as an industry, the Rural Development Administration plans to use these analysis results as the basis for urban farming policy formulation for the mutual development of urban and rural areas. Jongun, Arirang News.
aging beef usually takes 2 to 4 weeks, but now that process can be reduced dramatically using radio waves, which also resolves the issue of a hardened surface on the meat, which usually goes to waste. An Sung-jin has a story.
This unit that looks like a regular commercial refrigerator is all wired up. It's been installed to trial the latest radio wave meat aging technology. The facility itself is a low-temperature warehouse in a meat processing and distributing company. Normally, in the process of aging meat, 3 factors are critical: enzymes, temperature, and time. However, the latest technology developed by the Rural Development Administration that uses radio waves has changed the scene. Through rods, radio waves quickly bring the temperature of the meat to the 20 to 40 degrees Celsius range, where the enzyme reaction is most active. Meanwhile, the air inside the refrigerator reaches sub-zero temperatures, which suppresses the growth of microorganisms and allows the surface of the meat to dry quickly. This technology has significantly reduced the duration of the aging process, which normally takes between 2 to 4 weeks to a mere 48 hours.
It normally takes 30 to 40, even up to 60 days in order to get this unique cheesy flavor. But using radio waves, it's possible in 1 day. This changes economic feasibility.
Radio wave aged meat turned out to be 25% more tender than raw meat, and through the process, the amount of free amino acids, which gives the meat the sweet and rich flavor, increased 1.5 times. On the business front, yield losses decreased by 15 to 20% more than for regular dry-aged meat, and there was no wasting of the meat's surface layer that hardens in the dry aging process.
Because the meat is aged in a very short period, it can maintain high yields and quickly treat raw meat for commercialization. So I think it's a better option for distributors.
The Rural Development Administration hopes to revitalize the aged meat industry, and further, in partnership with the home appliance company, plans to introduce this new radio wave meat aging technology for commercial use in households. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
The third day of the Asian Games is underway in Hangzhou, China. South Korea added more goals yesterday to bring the total to 10, with fencer Oh Sang-woo clinching gold in an all-Korean final, where the South Korea men's swim relay team broke an Asian record. And the country is currently in second place in the medal standings. Our Matthew Ashley has the details.
In fencing, Oh Sang-wook won the gold in the men's individual sabre event in an all-Korean final. Oh's victory on Monday broke a winning streak held by opponent and compatriot Gu Bon-gil. Gu had previously won gold in the men's individual events in 3 straight Asiads and beat Oh in the 2018 final. This time, though, Oh Sang-wook won 15-7 for his first Asian Games title. South Korea now has 2 gold medals in the discipline, both from all-Korean finals in the men's and women's division. Oh and Gu are set to team up for the men's team sabre event, hoping for a 3rd consecutive gold. Moving on to swimming, where South Korea's men's relay team on Monday broke the Asian record to win gold in the 4x200-meter freestyle. Swimmers Yang Jae-hoon and Lee Ho-jun, Kim Woo-min and Hwang Son-woo set a new best for the continent at 7 minutes and 1.73 seconds. China took silver and Japan bronze. Team Korea's time beats a 14-year-old record set by Japan and is South Korea's first gold medal in the discipline. Meanwhile, swimmer Ji Yu-chan also secured a gold in the men's 50-meter freestyle on the same day. It's the 21-year-old's first Korea Asiad gold, with an Asian Games record time of 21.72 seconds. In table tennis, South Korea will face China in the men's table tennis team final this evening. South Korea on Monday managed to beat Iran 3-0 in the semi-finals. It's the South Korean men's 10th consecutive final of the Asiad event. But South Korea hasn't won gold since 1990. The men's final is set to take place on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Korea time. Meanwhile, South Korea's women's team had to settle for bronze after losing 3-1 against Japan in the semi-finals. And finally, in judo, South Korea's Lee Jun-hwan secured 2nd place on the podium in the men's under 81 kilogram event in his Asiad debut. In a closely fought match-up, the 21-year-old narrowly missed out on the gold to Tajikistan's Somon Makhmabedkov. Makhmabedkov's win came around 2 minutes into the match after he scored a critical point against Lee using a hip sweep counter, or harai goshikeshi. The move left Lee struggling to make a counterattack before his time ran out. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Wet weather continues in most parts of Korea. Central regions can expect to see showers letting up from the west in the late afternoon. Then it will rain again tomorrow. East Coast regions will see 20 to 70 millimeters of showers, and the rest of the country can expect 5 to 40 millimeters of on and off rain through Wednesday. Now, today's rain brought cooler air to the country, and those in central areas are having a big drop in highs this afternoon. Hovering below 25 degrees, Seoul at 22, Chuncheon at just 21 degrees. But Gwangju and Busan are warmer at 26 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, Jeju Island is having a rain-free day under cloudier skies with a high of 29. Much improved weather conditions are in the forecast for the 6th-day Chuseok holiday under sunny skies, but with chillier air. So please have a warmer jacket with you when traveling during the break. And we are welcoming October with morning temperatures in the low teens. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That is all for today. Thanks for watching.